So at this point, you've already created your Livekit account. You've saved your credentials somewhere safe that you can access later on so that you can utilize it for our backend as well as our front end code repo. And we want to create a database because if you're speaking with the agent and the next time you connect, it doesn't remember anything you're saying, well, that's kind of cool to show your friends, but from an actual application standpoint, we want to persist that data. So we're going to utilize MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. You can utilize any database that you prefer. MongoDB is super easy to spin up, and it's actually free to sign up for an account. So in this lecture, we're going to not only set up a MongoDB database, but we're also going to set up two collections, one for journal entries and the other for task, because we are building an executive assistant. You can customize this to whatever your customers need, but essentially having task and journal entries is the first and fundamental thing that you want any real executive or any type of application that's helping users get to a particular goal to have, right? So in this lecture, as I mentioned, we're going to set up that database that will store journal entries and these tasks from the VoiceAI agent. We're going to create a MongoDB Atlas account, set up a cluster, establish those two collections I mentioned, configure those access credentials, and I'll show you how to obtain that actual connection string, which is pretty much like your MongoDB API key that's needed for our application to handle the actual authentication with your particular database. Now you want to keep that somewhere safe, and this database, as I mentioned, will be used to maintain a persistent storage that enables our voice AI agent to create and manage information over long periods of time. Now, how do we actually do that? It's really simple. If we head over to the next tab here, so let's see exactly where we are. So this explains a little bit about Livekit. Here's MongoDB. Head over to mongodb.com and you can click get started. I've already clicked that button. So at this point, I'm going to accept, hit submit there. Awesome. So this is setting up. Great. So they're going to ask us a few questions here. You can always click on skip personalization. And they're going to have a few options here. You want to go with the free tier since you're simply trying to learn. I don't want them to preload a sample data set. Otherwise, they'll give you a bunch of like Netflix movies. And that's cool if you were trying to build a movie app. You don't have to start from scratch. But at this point, I think it's safer for me to essentially have a blank database. Now, you can name your cluster. I'm going to name it Michael Executive Assistant Cluster. Now, AWS is the only provider that's free here. So just leave it on that one. You can keep this region. You don't have to add tags, but we can create our deployment. Okay, so here they're going to give us a few credentials that we can utilize for our application. Now you don't have to go with that. You can change it to something else. I'm going to create my own credentials here. So I'll pause this so that you guys don't see that. You can name it whatever you want. So once you've went ahead and created a user and the password, you'll hit create database user. And now we can choose a connection method. So here it's going to ask us which one do we want. We're probably going to connect via the driver. So once you click that, they will in fact give you that connection string there. So I'm going to make sure that you guys can't see my credentials, but it will be in this region here. And you want to save that somewhere safe. So let me do that on my end. Awesome. So at this point, we can click on Done. And there's one last thing that we need to do for the pre-setup. This is before the database itself. And that's head over to Network Access. As of right now, it's only allowing your IP address to connect to this database. We want to allow access from anywhere. And that's all. Just click that, and then we'll click Confirm. So I'm clicking on Clusters. And here we can see that our cluster has in fact been created. We don't have a database yet. We just have a cluster. A lot of people confuse the cluster for the database. Isn't the same thing, okay? You can have several databases within a single cluster. Now, here, we don't have to click connect because at this point, you have saved your URL, which is pretty much your API key for MongoDB. But if you haven't, go ahead and click the connect button, and you can click on driver, and you will see your credentials there. Now, if we click on Browse Collections, it's going to tell me that I don't have a database. It's going to tell me to try the new Data Explorer. I'll say not now, and I'm going to say add my own data. So here we can name our database. I'll say Executive Assistant DB. And why don't we just put, actually, yeah, I want to keep it short. So I'll say Executive Assistant DB. And we can name our first collection. So the first collection that we'll name is journal underscore entries. Now you can add additional preferences. I'll just leave it as is for now. We'll create that. And now we'll see that collection. Currently there are no documents in there, which means there isn't any data in there. I'll create one more collection, and this one is simply going to be called task. Okay, so we'll click the create button. Awesome. So now we have journal entries and we have task. Now, at this point, you are officially done with setting up your MongoDB database. So now you can persist data for whenever you're interacting with the agent, you're calling certain functions. It will go ahead and save that data here. You can go ahead and update it, and awesome. You've now set up a lot of the infrastructure. Now, I'm not going to go through setting up an OpenAI account. Hopefully, you'll already have one. Just create an OpenAI account, put in at least $1 in there for the API. Now, ChatGPT and the OpenAI account are not the same thing. If you have a ChatGPT account, that does not necessarily mean you have an OpenAI API account. So go ahead and make sure you have the OpenAI API and put in at least $1 in there so that the real-time API works, and then you're good to go there. What we're going to do now is get the actual template code that you will be utilizing for your own agent. We'll get the backend and the front end code, and that should allow us to get started pretty quickly.